Thank you for listening to Pastoring on Purpose.
Welcome to Pastoring on Purpose. This is Dr. Tim Maness at the Center for Ministerial Care, and we are here in our wonderful studio here. And we have my colleague over here to my left, Raymond Culpepper II. Raymond, say hello to everybody, and how's things been going for you?
Hello. It's busy but good. It's great.
Busy but good.
Doing ministry here at Ministerial Care is good. You go through busy times, but I'm happy to be here and be a part of this great podcast that we're about to do.
Absolutely. And being a central key component of restoration, being restored. That's a wonderful word. And baseball has started as well.
Yes.
So I know as a Mets fan, you're excited about that. So I won't hold it against you. To my right is the professor, Dr. Jeff Sargent. He's got a lot on his plate this week in his lead day. And so I really do appreciate him taking time out of his busy schedule to be here with us today. Jeff, say hello to everyone.
Thank you. Hello, and it's good to be here. It's good to be back in the Center for Ministerial Care. This is, as a minister's son, I'm just really impressed with what we're doing here in the Church of God by offering this service. I know this sounds like an advertisement, but I'm just being genuine, all right? Mm-hmm. As a son of the Church of God, I really enjoy being reminded when I come over here how wonderful this is and the service that is being provided through our church organization. So glad to be back at the mic, regardless of how busy we all are right now. This is a fun project. So thank you for letting me tag along.
And you do have that perfect voice, the microphone voice, right?
Perfect voice, I don't know about that, but anyway, thank you very much. Yes.
Well, we have a special guest with us today here. You're not going to want to miss this episode. We have Jennifer Schuler with us. We're going to be talking about grief and loss and learning about her story. So we're going to take a quick break and be right back, and we will go right into Jennifer's story right after this.
Pastoring on Purpose is a production of the Center for Ministerial Care, a ministry of the Church of God.
And welcome back. As I said before the break, we have Jennifer Schuler with us. Jennifer has served in ministry for 22 years and currently serves as the director of LEAD Western North Carolina Church of God, which is a ministerial discipleship program for college-age students. She is, of course, passionate about raising up the next generation of godly leaders and passing on the torch. And her desire is to share her testimony of thriving, even through tragedy. She wants to help others do the same. Her motto, which I absolutely love, is do not stop living. She feels that her greatest accomplishments are her 3 children, Madison, Blake, and Braden. She is proud of how they have chosen better over bitter, and we'll probably talk about that some in this episode, as they follow God's calling on their lives. Jennifer, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here and to be around the table with all of you today.
Well, it is an honor to have you, and we have probably a lot of people within our faith movement listening that may be familiar with your story, but we also have a lot that are not, that may not even know anything about your story. And so if you would, just kind of share with us about what you've been through, because you've had to overcome extreme loss, extreme hurt, pain, grief. Share with the audience today a little bit about yourself and what you've been through lately.
Thank you for the opportunity to be able to share today. Well, first of all, just a little background about me. I was raised in a pastor's home, so I'm a PK in the Church of God. My husband that I married was raised in the Church of God as well, and we served in ministry full-time for 22 years together. And so we started off young, had a prosperous ministry, and our life was pretty normal. If normal is a thing in ministry, that's what we were. But our lives changed very drastically on December 8th, 2021. My husband, at the young age of 46 years old, passed away unexpectedly in his sleep. And overnight, my life literally changed. You know, we hear that, talked about that your life can change in an instant and unexpectedly. And you don't think that will happen to you. And so my life changed, my children's lives changed overnight. We've been navigating this new journey ever since, and it's had its challenges, but we are grateful that God has sustained us through this.
I can't imagine, like you said, there was no signs of sickness. There was just, you go to bed one night, you think you're going to get up, everything's going to be normal.
Yeah.
The sun, we take that for granted, like the sun's just going to be there in the morning, and that wasn't the case. If you're comfortable sharing with us, give us kind of a glimpse of how difficult, what was that like? I can't imagine.
Yeah, so December 7th was our last travel day with our students before Christmas break. So we came home that night and kind of laughed about some things that had happened that day. And we had some victories for our ministry that day as well. Some amazing things had been approved. So it was a great day. But we had plans on December 8th to celebrate with our students before they went on break on December 9th. And so you go to bed and, you just think that you're going to wake up the next morning and fulfill those plans. And as I woke up the next morning and realized very quickly that Mark was not with us anymore, I am thankful that God guided me through that morning. There were very strategic things that I know that in my own mental capacity, I would not have been able to navigate through. And I do recognize that it was God, the Holy Spirit, that helped me to navigate, to be able to protect my children from things I didn't want them to see their dad that way. Also, having to tell them, that's you don't ever rehearse what you would say and how that would be. And so I know that God helped me through that. Even, calling 911, and I was very specific with him that morning. Like, I know he's gone. And when you come in my home, I want you to be quiet. I don't want there to be sirens. I don't want there to be lights. I don't want to disrupt my children. Or them to even know anything is going on at this point. And they respected that.
Wow.
And so protecting them.
Mark was a remarkable man of God. And I don't know if I shared this with you or not, but he actually had an impact on my son's life right before he passed. And it was, obviously not the same level, but Braden was sad whenever he found out. And just what kind of person was Mark?
Mark was everybody's friend, for sure. I mean, he never met a stranger and had the ability to make anybody feel like somebody. Yeah. And he, did a lot of that with humor. Mm-hmm. People knew him by his humor. He could make everybody laugh. And so he was the guy that, people wanted around and liked being in his company, for sure.
How old were your kids at the time?
So Madison was 19, Blake was 16, and Braden was 12.
What did you do to kind of deal with what is really an impossible, very, very difficult level of loss and grief?
Well, honestly, I think the first thing that was key in me navigating this journey was facing the reality of what it was.
Yeah.
I think sometimes denial is our worst enemy. And so from the beginning, I faced the reality of what it was, that, I didn't live in a fantasy world or try to deny what had taken place in our life. But I can take you back to a very pivotal moment. It was on a Saturday night, the night before we were going to leave to travel to where we were going to have Mark's services. And nobody had let me be alone. He passed on Wednesday. This is Saturday. I didn't do anything alone. And I finally, told my family, I said, listen, I just need some time. Like, I'm going to be okay, but I need you to give me space. And I went to my bedroom, and that was the first moment I had really gone back to that place. And I remember just getting on my knees and telling God, I don't know how to navigate this, but I know you do.
Yeah.
And I'll trust you through this journey if you'll help me. And I know, as cliche as this sounds, or as so generic or something that, oh, yeah, that just makes sense. Until you're there, you don't realize that truly, when God is all you have, you can rest assured that it's truly all you need. Yeah. And I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I couldn't make it without his strength and his help and his wisdom. I prayed for wisdom every day, that God would give me wisdom to help my children as I'm helping myself. I knew the responsibility that I couldn't fail them in this moment. I couldn't just focus on me. They were relying on me to help them navigate as well. So honestly, just leaning in to God. And then I made the decision that I still wanted to live. Yeah. I made the decision that as long as there was breath in my lungs, that I wanted to live. I didn't want to just be alive. I wanted to live and have purpose.
And you have 3 beautiful kids.
Yes.
Right?
Very proud mom.
You know, and you're in ministry. You're a leader in ministry.
Yes. I think the reality hit me one day when I was talking to a widow friend of mine, and we were talking about navigating things with our children. And I realized I wasn't just a single parent. I was an only parent. You know, and when you're a single parent, there oftentimes is that other parent that is helping support in some sort of way. You know, you're sharing time with them, you're sharing the responsibilities, you're navigating even decisions together. Mm-hmm. And I realized in that moment as we were talking that I was it. Mm-hmm. There wasn't somebody else to navigate decisions with. There wasn't another person to help, financially or, to take the load off sometimes. It was just me. And so I realized in that moment, I wasn't a single parent. I was an only parent. That's a huge responsibility.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's amazing because, like you said, it's only been, only 17 months.
Yeah, almost.
And that might seem like a long time, but when you've gone through what you've had to go through, that's not that long.
Yeah, and some days, the kids and I talk about this, some days it feels like it was so long ago, and some days it feels like it just happened. Yeah. But I can say this too, that I think God gives us the space of feeling like there's distance because you can only handle that level of grief for so long. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that God is intentional in sometimes creating a distance for you to be able to heal and navigate through.
When did you kind of get to the point, and what kind of got you to that point where you said, you know what, I still have to live?
It was that moment, that Saturday when I was praying in my room and asking God for wisdom and direction. I did not want my children to lose both parents.
Wow.
Because there is a difference between being alive and living. Mm-hmm. And so I knew that it was unrealistic for me not to face the reality and go through what I needed to go through to be able to heal. Mm-hmm. And that was strategic. And I kind of am that way in a lot of areas in my life. So maybe that was a strength that helped me through this. Yeah. But I knew that it would be strategic. But I knew in that moment that I had 3 reasons to continue to live and 3 reasons to get up every day and put one foot in front of the other. And also that if I believed God's word to be true, then I needed to live it. Yeah. And I truly believed. I've said this many times in sharing my story. I was dumb enough to believe that God was close to the brokenhearted. Yeah. I was dumb enough to believe that he would never leave me or forsake me.
I mean, you actually believe what the word says,
exactly.
Right?
The joy,
it really is true.
That the joy of the Lord is my strength, and that, And so these are the things that I quoted over myself every single morning.
Yeah.
Before I could even get out of the bed, I read God's word back to myself.
Wow. And I would say you have more than just 3 kids. That's enough. But God has a calling on your life. You have a ministry. There's anointing. There's a purpose. There's even more outside of your children that are going to be impacted by it. So, when your husband went to go on to be with the Lord, that didn't change God's plans for you, right? His talk to us a little bit about that calling in your life and how it's really important for you to kind of be able to see there's still work left to be done.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know for a fact that at the age of 14, in a little town called Xenia, Ohio, at Cincinnati Avenue Church of God, where my dad was pastoring, that I was called, that God had a call on my life. Yeah. And so when I married, I didn't marry into a calling. I was called myself. And so when the events transpired and Mark passed, I knew that God still had a calling on my life. And that didn't go away because Mark passed. Your identity changes overnight. You're no longer a wife. You're no longer a pastor's wife. You're no longer, it literally changes overnight. And so I had to know what my true identity was. It wasn't in those titles. It was in who God called me to be.
Right.
And so I was unapologetic about knowing that I was still called. There were things that I recognized very early on, and I would like to touch on this a little bit, is my relationships began to change. Yeah. Those other couples in ministry that we had been connected with, all of a sudden didn't know what to do with me. Wow. and I recognized that. And at first it it hurt my feelings, but then I was like, they just don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. They don't know how to, the dynamics change. They don't know my place anymore. They're, and so I extended grace in that because I've been that person. I recognized I did that to somebody, not intentionally, but it just, we don't know what to say. We don't know what to do. And so a lot of times in those moments, we detach ourselves because we don't have a full understanding and know how to navigate that with somebody else.
Right.
And so I had a lot of people that I know that truly loved me, would be there for me to the extent of their capability, but I knew that this was something that I was going to have to do alone. So in that, I had to root myself in the true identity of who I was. And as I referenced earlier, those titles were not who I was. Strip all of that away.
Yeah.
Strip all of the titles away. I am chosen by God.
Yeah.
I am fearfully and wonderfully made. He
Amen.
has a plan and a purpose for my life.
Yes.
And that was the core that I had to stand on when all the other things had been stripped away, and believe that and live it. And even on days when I didn't feel it, I still had to walk in it.
You encountered grief unexpectedly, which it often happens. You were thrust into a situation where not only you're dealing with the feelings of loss of your husband, but the loss of your identity, as you said.
Yes.
So there becomes this time or period, I assume, you tell me, you inform me, where you engage in identity reconstruction. Who am I? I'm no longer a wife. I'm no longer this title or that title. So how did you go about doing that? What was that like?
I don't know that there's a clear-cut step program, this is step 1, this is step 2, in detaching yourself from titles. But you have to realize you need to come to the realization that your true identity is not attached to any position or any title. Your true identity is in who Christ created you to be and who he called you to be. And so having that realization that I'm no longer a wife, I'm no longer a pastor's wife, and in our church world, all of a sudden, oftentimes the widow disappears. Mm-hmm. I knew that God would make room for who he called Jennifer to be. And that not being a wife anymore and not being a pastor's wife anymore. And I'll be honest, I really don't like to be referred to as a widow. That might be a pride thing. I'm not sure. I'm too young for that. But I knew that none of that really was who I was. That didn't change who God called me to be. And so I was willing to step into the fact that if I strip all of these titles away and all of these positions away, who am I? Who is Jennifer? I was called at 14. That didn't change because my husband passed away. The direction might change, the position might change, but that didn't change who I was.
But how are you doing that while you're grieving over your husband?
I think it's a part of the grieving journey. I think it goes hand in hand. I think one way that you truly grieve is to truly face reality. And until you truly face reality of the situation, you will never be able to move forward. And please understand that moving forward is not moving on. Yeah. Moving forward is simply giving yourself the permission to say there is still life. It is okay to still live. That's, when you take your marriage vows, in the Bible says, till death do you part. I was confident in the fact that facing the reality was part of grieving and was part of the process of healing and being able to move forward. And that probably became an enemy to me. Oftentimes, that mindset can be misunderstood by others. They feel as though maybe you're not honoring that person anymore. And that's not the reality. I honor Mark every day. I'm raising his children, and they're thriving. They can openly communicate about their father at any time. We have conversations. Mm-hmm. We, daily I'm asking my kids, hey, are you struggling with something, And so it became an enemy of mine, but I had to be okay with not attaching myself to other people's opinions of how this journey was to play out, because it was my journey.
I think that is really a beautiful statement and a testament of your approach to grief that I don't think everybody understands, that it is so personal and so individual.
Yes.
It was my relationship with
Yes.
this person, and it does not mirror anyone else's relationship.
Correct.
Right. Therefore, you don't have the right to tell me how I should grieve.
Exactly.
I know how I felt about this person and what I thought about them, and it's going to be my own way to grieve. Mm-hmm. However, you do allude to the pressure one can feel from others.
Absolutely.
Like, okay, you should grieve this way or that way. Let me tell you, as your friend, as your relative, this is how you should grieve. So this is what you should be doing.
And that kind of grief you can feel guilt.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's one of the battles you have to fight there, mm-hmm. too.
Yeah.
It's just guilt. It's not all just what other people are thinking. You ask yourself, do I feel this? What is going on? Right. Am I wrong for taking off the wedding ring?
Yeah.
Is he going to haunt me, with chains around his feet like an old Gordon Lightfoot song? Or is it really a new identity we're doing here?
Yeah, I was sharing that, it was 3 months into the journey and I decided to take my wedding ring off, and I knew I was wearing it to make other people feel comfortable. And that wasn't my job. My job was not to make others feel comfortable. My job was to navigate this journey how I needed to in order to heal. And that moment is the moment I realized that I could free myself of other people's opinions of how I needed to grieve. Because until you're there, until you've walked in those shoes, you will never understand the reality of the situation. And then even then, no two people will grieve the same. And so, I remember people would say to me, "You seem so happy." And in the same day, somebody would say, "Oh, you seem so sad. I'm worried about you." And at that moment, I was
Appreciate that.
everybody's perceiving me differently.
Exactly.
So you know what? I can just be me.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's, I've kind of been that person since I was a kid. So that's probably been a strength for me through this, was being comfortable with just being me. And, but you know what? I let go of the guilt. And it's so true. So many people live in the guilt. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing is God has given us life more abundantly. We were supposed to live in abundance.
Absolutely.
And he knew that death would be a part of our journey. And so you can still live an abundant life and grieve and move forward and still know that there's something ahead. And you can still live, and it is okay to live, and it is okay to still have dreams and make goals and see a future for yourself. And that is not me not living in reality. Dr. Manis is sitting here. He has walked this journey with me. He knows the conversations that we've had.
Absolutely. And like I said, I'm extremely proud of what you've been able to do. And I feel like we had a really small part in that and what we did, but you're the one that had to go through it. You're the one that had to face it. You're the one that had to have those very difficult conversations with your kids that
Absolutely.
nobody ever wants to have.
Yeah.
And here you are. You have such remarkable, because I do want to talk about them for just a second. Your kids are doing so well, aren't they?
They are.
I mean, I see online where, on Facebook where your son is doing revivals.
Yes.
And he's becoming a leader himself. Mm-hmm. Your oldest daughter, I mean, all of them are doing well. Kind of share with how they've been able to what you've been able to see and God's grace work through that.
Our motto at home has been, we are going to be better and not bitter. And I prayed over my children and prayed that, they would not blame God or be angry at God through this, but that they would lean into God, and they've done just that. And, Madison is part of the LEAD program, mm-hmm. and she's going to be going into worship and youth ministry. And Blake, just deemed himself an evangelist. Yeah. So he's traveling everywhere. And my youngest son is his armor bearer. They go That's everywhere awesome. Together, and he supports Blake. And I know God has a special call, different, but special call on his life as well. But, God can take your tragedy and use it. Literally. I mean, Absolutely. We say these things. We preach, you hear Absolutely. The preacher say them, and make, beauty for ashes. Mm-hmm. And But when you get to live it, it's a different type of.
So I want to jump in there. So this motto of "Don't stop living." If I had heard this out of the context of this conversation and you and your story, I probably would have just looked my nose down, looked down my nose at that and scoffed and said, "Oh, that's a nice platitude. That's really going to help somebody." But I'm hearing it repeated in this context, and it sounds like it's very meaningful to you. Could you help us understand, for the people who are listening, what does it mean to don't stop living? What do you mean by living?
Mm-hmm. And by the end of this year, they'll be able to read my book, Don't Stop Living.
Oh, okay. So I didn't even know that. That was kind of a promo, but I didn't mean it that way.
So thank you. Yeah. But you can be alive, you can be breathing, you can be existing and not living. And living means fulfilling your purpose for life, having, living in your passion, using your current circumstances to make an impact and a difference. God can take what you've been through and allow you the opportunity to help others. One of the greatest ways to heal is giving back what you have been through. So being able to help others. And so when I mean living, I mean continuing to fulfill your purpose, continuing to know that you still have purpose and not just exist. God does not want you to just exist. And death in your life does not, when somebody, your spouse or your child, or, a family member, that's a big loss. That's huge. But it doesn't mean that you can't still live. And one thing that you have to get past, as you were saying earlier, is the guilt. You have to allow yourself to be free from the guilt.
Jennifer, it's an honor to be able to have the opportunity to kind of walk with you and your family. I don't have all the answers. I just want to say I am so extremely proud of what you're doing. You don't need the applause of men or women. You're not living to try to just go through existence to try to please people around you. You have a calling that is much greater than that. And you are a very anointed, powerful woman of God that doesn't need that from any man, including myself, what you've been through. I don't know if I could do it, to be quite honest with you. I don't know if, knowing what I know about grief, but it's different when you experience it.
Yeah, but God's not a respecter of person. So I think that, when you truly lean into him,
absolutely, his
promises are true.
Yeah.
And so I just think that we don't give him enough credit.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you read that in the Word, right, when he draws close to the brokenhearted, he does mean it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking he's closer to us right now than he is a lot of other people because we're truly brokenhearted.
Absolutely. We've got people that are going to be listening that's been going through grief of different levels, different types of pain. And they're listening to this. Well, what can I take? What would you give them? What kind of suggestion would you give them to help them? What do they need to do to kind of, like you said, every story is different. It is their grief. Going through what you've gone through, what would you want to say to them that might be of help to them that are listening right now?
You cannot control what happens to you. You can control how you respond to what happens to you. And so your response is very key. You will truly know the strength of the foundation that you have in your faith when you walk through something like this. And so for those of you who are not, the reality is we all are going to go through something. We've just gone through something, or we're, currently going through something. Yeah. And that is the reality. And so I would say if you're not in the middle of something right now and you don't feel like your foundation is solid, don't wait until then to prepare yourself and to prepare your foundation. Because it wasn't in that moment that I began to prepare myself. It was the time before that helped me to stand when I didn't know what the next day would look like, or even the next moment, the next hour. And also, I've been very passionate about this, and I've talked to Dr. Manis about this. I think we need to normalize that it is okay. It doesn't make you less Christian to get help. And what I mean by that is I believe it's becoming more recognized, but I believe it's still one of the most unrecognized and yet one of the most valuable ministries that we have in our denomination, and that is ministerial care. So, we're sitting in the office of ministerial care, and I think about how many people feel ashamed to receive the help that is there. And I told you I would be a spokesperson. I have no shame in my game to say that I knew that we needed somebody who could professionally, not, the family that was grieving alongside with us, or the friends who wanted to say something, so they said things that were really ignorant because they didn't know what to say. Mm-hmm. I knew that from the beginning that we needed help. And then it's provided for us. We need to put our pride aside and say, it's okay. It doesn't make you any less Christian to go to the doctor when you're sick and find out what's wrong with you. True. It doesn't make you any less Christian or mean that you don't have a prayer life or any of those things that we have somehow believed. It's not true. And so I know that God has given the leaders of this ministry the wisdom to help. This is their ministry. This is their calling. And so just as pastors are preparing, to lead their church and messages on Sunday, I know you all are doing the same for your ministry as well.
Thank you so much for that. And, it's true. This is why we do what we do. I get nervous around perfect people. And Jennifer, thank you so much for being so open, so candid. And God has so many wonderful things. I can't wait to see what God is going to do through your leadership. It's exciting. Jennifer, is there a place for those that are listening right now? Maybe they want to get in touch with you. Maybe they want to share how much this meant to them. I think you mentioned that you have a book coming out that you're writing right now.
Yes.
Is there a place that they could, get in touch with you if they would like to?
You can follow me on social media platforms. I'm on Facebook, Instagram as Jennifer Schuler on Facebook, Jennifer Renee on Instagram. So
awesome. And what's the name of the book that you're going to be writing?
Don't Stop Living.
Perfect. Don't Stop Living. So you'll want to be looking for that. Jennifer, thank you so much for being with us. All right, we'll take a break, and when we come back, we will join Raymond with that section of the show that we call Raymond's Recap.
You've been listening to Pastoring on Purpose, a podcast of the Center for Ministerial Care.
And welcome back. And this is the section of the show where we talk to Raymond, and we call it Raymond's Recap. Raymond, give us a recap of this episode and how it really impacted you and perhaps our listeners.
Well, I think the thing that I take away from this whole podcast is just how you impact everybody else. You said earlier that you appreciated being here with us, and you've talked some about how the counseling has helped, and that's been a part of your recovery. Sometimes people will tell you as a counselor, I don't know how you do what you do. I wouldn't be able to do it. You just sit and listen to problems. But that's kind of just the start point. The point they don't get to see, and the point that you're embodying here in this whole podcast, is the point where you go out and you do the work and you grow as a person. What people don't see is, that's kind of where people are sometimes. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But the part where they start to recover and God is doing a restoration for them, and the point where they're able to put things back together and grow and overcome, rebuild identities, rebuild their life in a different way, and overcome that and fulfill God's calling to be more than a conqueror.
Yes.
When you see people do that, it ministers back to you. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I wouldn't be able to find in any other line of work. And it's people like you that make it so rewarding for us.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Jennifer, thank you so much for being with us. For myself, my colleague, Dr. Sargent, my other colleague, Raymond, the man, Culpepper, thank you for being with us for this episode, and we look forward to seeing you again on Pastoring on Purpose. God bless.
You've been listening to Pastoring on Purpose, a podcast of the Center for Ministerial Care. We talk with pastors, church staff, and mental health professionals about what it's really like to lead and serve a congregation. From pastoral burnout to boundaries, the pressing issues of leadership to the pertinent little details that help a body progress, We're here to help you be a healthier leader, pastor, and person.